Good morning. Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and in honor of my grandmother, Alina Bonda Weber, who perished at Auschwitz on December 1st, 1943, it is an honor to be speaking today, to have a banter with Beth today in honor of her memory. May her memory be for a blessing. I see that our esteemed guest, Liz Vogel, the Los Angeles Executive Director of Facing History and Ourselves, has just waved. I'm going to wave back, and I'm going to bring you on, Liz, but I have to make one adjustment in my studio before I do that. So hang on one second. Let's see here. I forget sometimes that the glare in the morning at this location creates a lot of cast into the shadows of my glasses, so I had to fix that. Okay, so here we go. So I am going to bring Liz on. Let's see if she's going to join us. It's really exciting, Facing History and Ourselves. You will learn from Liz all the remarkable things that they've been doing for the last 25 years. And there you are. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you. It's so good to see you.
It's nice to see you again, too, for sure. Absolutely. You have had to, I can't even imagine what's going on over in your office, considering all of the current events of the day. Yes, we are here today to talk about International Holocaust Remembrance Day, as well as Facing History and Ourselves, but how have you been navigating what's been going on in our country, at our nation's capital? I know that you guys have put out already, like immediately within 24 hours, you had educational teaching tools. So talk to us about everything.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and especially on such a day as this. And so I heard the dedication to your grandmother, and I'm just really honored to join you today. For people who may not know, Facing History and Ourselves uses lessons of history to challenge teachers and their students to stand up to bigotry and hate. That's our mission. As one longtime supporter and dear friend of mine says, we believe that the path to democracy runs through the classroom. So everything that we do to support middle and high school educators in working with their students really has that at its heart. And so it's been a really challenging several years, I would say, as we've developed our internal capacity to respond to current events and to respond to sometimes breaking news, which changes and evolves, as you know. So I was incredibly proud of our team. As you said, just within hours of the horrific events on January 6th, our team had published a teaching idea, it's kind of what we call it, to help teachers show up that next morning and begin to try to not necessarily even make sense of it with their students, but process with their students and unearth the questions and the fears and all of the things that we know that they would be facing. And we did see an incredible response. We've been building that capacity in our organization for a while, but more than 125,000 teachers access that teaching idea within the first 16 or 24 hours, I think.
That's amazing.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So we've been busy, yes. And we've published, additional, as the news has unfolded and our understanding of the events has changed, we've updated our materials, we've built out our materials. So even just today in relation to Holocaust Remembrance Day, we published another blog about sort of recommitting to Holocaust education when you really focus in on the anti-Semitic thread that was so clear during the insurrection, and that is, sometimes less clear, but sort of there and present through so much of far right and white supremacist ideology. So we have our work cut out for us, because these are not easy topics, as you know.
Oh, for sure. So let's just go back a little bit. Facing History has been around for 25 years. Is
We've
that
been around
correct?
for 25 years in Los Angeles. We actually started in 1976 in Boston, Massachusetts.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
40, what is that? Now I even lose track, but
Yeah.
45 years.
Right, right. That's amazing. I didn't realize that. Okay, so 25 years in Los Angeles. And why did Facing History begin? What was the initial, like, seed spark of why it decided to become an entity?
Sure. So our founder, Margot Stern-Strom, was a middle school educator. She had studied adolescent moral development. And when she began teaching, she um, reflected on her own education and also what she was instructed to teach and how out of sync those things were with the world around her. So Margot always told a story of growing up in segregated Memphis, Tennessee, where she could sit in her schoolhouse and look out across the street at the zoo that had a sign that said colored day on Thursday, and the
Oh,
segregation was never discussed in her classes, and she could get an A in civics. And so she reflected on that when she became a teacher during a time of busing in Boston, a lot of racial conflict that was, and a global context as well that was fraught. And these were things that she was not really instructed or taught um, to talk about with her students, and yet she knew from her own studies that especially around middle school and adolescent moral development, young people really are innately moral philosophers and can be trusted to grapple with really challenging issues if done responsibly and if done appropriately. And so she really endeavored to do something different, and that's really how we started.
that's incredible. That's wonderful. And each chapter that has opened, Chicago, Los Angeles, are there more chapters around the country?
Yes, we have 7 offices across the United States. We also have an entity in Canada and one in the UK, and we work globally with partner organizations in other countries as well. But we have 7 U.S. based offices, and we serve teachers sort of everywhere. Especially we have forever, online, but especially we've seen such an uptick in the last year or so as everything has gone digital.
Right, right. So that was actually one of my next questions. How has remote learning impacted the work that you guys are doing during the pandemic?
So we were able to pivot pretty quickly because we had invested in online learning for years, and really were we weren't sort of maybe leading edge, but we were definitely ahead of the curve in
Hmm.
understanding what translates from an in-person or a live experience to online when you're dealing with the 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 sort of material that's sensitive that we deal with. So we're not only about the content itself, which is hard, but also about the teaching strategies, or what we call the pedagogy. How do you actually engage the combination of head, heart, and ethical reflection? How do you do that online? So we were able to pivot. We've been able to serve teachers. We have evaluation even coming in from some of the new ways that we've been serving teachers to get a better sense of what's working and what teachers need.
Could you give an example of a strategy that you guys employ?
Sure. Um, so I think, I guess, well, I'll give an example of a classroom strategy. That sometimes translates and may or may not translate exactly online. But one of the things that we think is really important is like civil discourse,
Hmm.
and teaching young people how to stay engaged with people who may have very different viewpoints, how to develop your viewpoint, how to articulate it, and also how to, first of all, disagree without like disavowing the person, and also how to practice potentially maybe changing your mind with new information. So a teaching strategy, there are a few that work in this way, but for example, a teacher might do a barometer activity where you might have sort of you might put out a statement. I think a lot about the statement of this is not who we are. For example, people saying that in the US after something like the insurrection, like this is not, this is not who we are. And you would have a barometer where students would physically line up or in virtual format find a way to position themselves on the spectrum from fully agree to fully disagree with that statement, right? So there's no wrong answer. There's just, where do you fall? Where are you on this? And then the teacher might facilitate conversation. Okay, who's willing to share why you're standing where you're standing? Could someone else on a different part of the barometer share why you're standing where you're standing? And so as students are expressing their opinions and their viewpoints and sharing the evidence that backs up why they are where they are, maybe someone says, oh, I had never thought about it like that before. Oh, this is part of who we are. We have a tradition of white supremacist violence in this country. I hadn't really thought about that. Okay. Right. And it's not that the point isn't necessarily that students are changing their minds. It's that process of the strategy of having the conversation influences how the conversation happens.
It reminds me a lot of like theater exercises, acting exercises. I'm an actor, and just the idea of physically moving your body and changing your physical position in the room. You're not at a desk. It's not just all intellectual. You get up, your bones and your blood and everything has to come along for the ride.
Yes.
And you get into this physical line, and then potentially changing places, maybe even with somebody else, to see how it feels physically, internally, emotionally. And just the idea as, what I do as an actor is I try and climb into someone else's shoes and see their point of view, to not judge it. I mean, how else can, we play bad guys if we judge it? We, everybody had a mother, everybody had a father, no matter what. Like that's just like the sun will come up, the moon will go down, the all of that. And it's wonderful that you're using techniques like that can really hopefully get students and just adults, anyone. I would imagine that there are some teachers who have gotten some new points of view and perspectives by employing the strategies where they might not have thought of it that way before. So that's awesome. That's really, really great. What made you want to join the team? When did you come on board? And you've been the Los Angeles director for quite some time, haven't you?
I have. I mean, it surprises even me, but I've actually this is my 20th year at Facing History.
You don't look old enough to be at the 20th year. No way.
Really sweet. That's very nice to say. I was very young, and I started in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area office. And I've been the executive director in Los Angeles since 2014, so it has been a while. I joined because really when I started, it was because when I learned about Facing History, it was everything I'd wished my own education might have been. I hated history growing up. It was my least favorite subject in all of school. I surprisingly became a history major in college, but that's because I finally had a history class, but it took being maybe my third year in college that actually was, engaging in the way that I now understand history can and should be taught. So when I found Facing History, for me, I loved being a student. I loved being a learner. Facing History is a learning community. And especially at that time, I was not very far out of college. It felt like very personal. The content mattered to me. The mission mattered to me. And I would say I've stayed in part because it really has shaped my whole life and how I've become a parent and how I engage with the world. And so I feel like I'm still learning. And that's kind of the best thing I could have hoped for in finding, my career and developing my career.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Right. Thank you.
What are some of the hardest tasks that you've had to deal with in terms of your platform and how you're distributing your materials to educators?
Yeah, I mean, there's some like operational things that are probably less interesting, but in terms of we grew as a grassroots organization and really centered on relationships with teachers, understanding teachers as this incredible lever of change in the school. And investing in a teacher, you know, might connect to teacher retention rates, and then that investment pays out, you know, more and more every year as they reach more and more students. But transitioning from a truly grassroots organization to the kind of scale that we feel the mandate to have at Facing History now is, there's just a lot of operational challenges in
Sure.
that. But I think, you know, the really challenging parts are end up being in small moments. I mean, I remember very vividly the first time a teacher came to us because they had a Holocaust denier in their classroom, and that was, you know, that happened from time to time. It's very challenging to coach someone through that, and unfortunately, I think we've seen more and more of that in recent years. So it's both really hard and also kind of helps me double down on why the work is so important.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. Let's, you know, especially today on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, let's talk about Holocaust denial, which I just read in the paper this morning that Iran has a state mandate to deny the Holocaust. I was flabbergasted when I read that. I didn't realize it was actually law.
Right.
So what are some strategies that you use to work with Holocaust deniers and to educate them?
So I mean, there's sort of a number of things that um, I've heard us, you know, and I have helped to counsel teachers about. I mean, sometimes with a student, I mean, there's definitely a balance between multiple perspectives and creating an environment where every voice in your classroom can be heard. And we've always also said, like, you don't give the same weight and time to Holocaust denial that you do to survivors and to the story. So how do you balance that? And I think for teachers, how this is another place, this is a place where like cancel culture does really come into play, because if you're an educator and your goal is um, to not just isolate that student and push them aside, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that, the consequence of that could be greater and worse than, you know, staying in the conversation and trying to reach them, probably more through affective strategies than just information, right? At the point at which you're talking about Holocaust denial, I mean, sometimes it's regurgitation of things that young people have heard in other places. So sometimes it's that, but other times it's more, you're not going to go fact for fact and expect to change hearts. And so I think I don't claim to have the answer. I have colleagues at Facing History much more skilled than I am at this. But I think it's it's kind of in some ways very individual every time a teacher comes across it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, right. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me to try and understand the perspective. I would actually love to learn some of those teaching strategies to help myself understand it. It's just kind of like, I don't know, a desk is an object, it's a thing. This horrible event happened, it's a thing. So it's something that's, I think, very, very difficult for those of us who are children and grandchildren of those that were persecuted and those who survived, to really understand how someone could flatly deny it.
It's, I mean, especially as you said, I mean, it should affront all of us, you know, and I think especially when you have that very personal connection, then it's, you know, also more highly emotionally charged and painful. And I do think it's a force that we all have to reckon with. And I mean, as you well know, knowledge of the Holocaust, even as it's, you know, part of state standards for teaching, like knowledge of the Holocaust in the U.S. in particular and around the globe is decreasing. So there's kind of these the need to recommit to this education, you can come at that from pretty much, any angle and understand why it's so critical.
Right. I mean, doing my research with, for example, Congresswoman Maloney, who wrote the Holocaust education bill that was passed last June, it only took her, I think, 22 years to get her bill to the floor. They just wouldn't give her time to speak about it, but it did pass overwhelmingly, thank goodness. But in that research, I discovered that there are only 16 states in our country that require teaching Holocaust education. So we clearly have to change that to all 50 states at the bare minimum. But I think you bring up such a good point about going fact for fact is almost pointless. And whether it's with Holocaust deniers or really any argument that anyone's having, fact for fact is just never going to change hearts. So that really does speak to, I think, what makes Facing History unique is that you are trying to access people's, their empathy and, of course, their tolerance, but true empathy within someone's soul and in their heart.
That's right. I mean, I was thinking just in preparation for this conversation, thinking about the conversation that you and I had before and just your work on your film and how important it is to tell these stories and how, I know that your medium is film and film reaches people differently than reading does. And we just did a webinar. My colleague, Mary Hendra facilitated a webinar, I think last week with a podcast called Those Who Were There that's run through the Fortunoff Video Archives at Yale. Incredible stories of survivor testimony. And part of what I found so interesting, what they were talking about, podcasts as a medium and how there's research that, listening, like, especially because we all now put in our AirPods or earbuds or whatever it is, that, when you're not focused on seeing, something different happens in your brain. And you hear this voice almost in your head and you have to focus on creating your own pictures and how the connection happens in a different way. I mean, not better, worse, whatever, but just that it's another way, like another medium that teachers can use, that we all can use to hear firsthand from survivors, hear firsthand from people's experiences, and how much closer that can get us to empathy and to that that perspective taking than often just the textbook, right? I mean, we need textbooks for sure, but they're not going to make that leap in the way that some of these other forms do, and that I think are just so critical.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Would You Hide Me, the film that I'm making, absolutely has that goal that we can access people's mirror neurons so that they can truly feel and experience what the people in the film are feeling and experiencing. And that to me has always been my goal as an actor, whether I'm on stage or film, that you want your audience to come along with you on the ride and feel it for themselves.
Right.
As opposed to telling them how to feel.
Right.
Let them make their own decisions. You, Facing History, I believe, was one of the supporters of an incredible podcast called We Share the Same Sky. And this was a beautiful podcast that I listened to. I'm not remembering her name right now. I should have made sure I knew it for today. But she tells the story about going back to where her grandmother was. And it's a powerful podcast that is dramatic, and it's a series. So it's not news, but I'm pretty sure at the end of every episode, she thanks Facing History.
Oh, amazing. I'll have to that sounds familiar, but I'll have to check it out. Thank you.
It's called We Share the Same Sky. Yeah.
Okay.
So what's next for you? I mean, where do you go? You have so many successes, and you have a broad base now. You're in 3 countries, and you have 16,000 educators showing up within 24 hours to grab your material when we have
the scariest insurrection in the history of our, at least this century or the 20th and 21st centuries. Where do you go next?
Well, we definitely have some success and some momentum, but I think we all feel like there's so much work to do. We first of all believe, teachers deserve the ongoing professional development that, doctors get with grand rounds, and sort of like the ongoing education lawyers get, or other professional groups really invest in continuing education. And teachers are faced with so many challenges, so many compounded challenges, especially now and really into the foreseeable future. I mean, I don't think our post-COVID world that we can't even quite see yet will be simpler. And so we're really dedicated to helping teachers, helping whole schools and school districts go deeper. I think accessing the teaching idea is really great and important, and it's also not, and like it's not it. I mean, how do you actually go deep on a case study, or either whether around the Holocaust or looking at the Reconstruction era in U.S. history, or some of the other case studies that really allow for that deep engagement and learning. So we're getting out there, and we always need more champions and sort of ambassadors to help us share and amplify our message and our work and help teachers find us. But with every generation, we're just committed to reaching as many students as we possibly can. So, I mean, that's kind of, we're on that path. I think we have our work cut out for us in, given what's been going on. I don't think this goes away anytime soon. We have a lot to learn from actually a lot of the other countries where we've worked that have been in more transitional justice post-conflict, like the U.S. could really learn from potentially. Mm-hmm. So I think that's interesting. And then, something I'm just really excited about, as we've been around for 45 years, we actually have generations of alumni, people who took basic history as students, who are doing incredible things out in the world. And I would love for us to sort of find a way to really help people self-identify as alumni and share sort of their stories, and so that we can sort of see that impact, how it's taking place in the world.
That's such a wonderful idea. That's so great. Are there trends that you're seeing with students today, a younger generation, that makes you feel hopeful?
Oh, that's such a great question. I love this question. I've always said, and even more so recently, to anyone who's feeling down about the state of the world, just come with me to a class. Just come with me to sit in on a class with students. When young people are trusted to grapple, they have the path. Like I really, their voices are clear. Their sense of agency that they can make a difference is palpable. And they are ready to take on the challenges. And I often worry that we sometimes put too much pressure on young people to solve all the problems that we've created for them, or continued and are leaving them. But there isn't an interaction with students I have that doesn't leave me more hopeful than how I came into it. So that's an open invitation. It's harder with Zoom, I would say, but I would be excited and would love the chance to bring you into a classroom.
I would love that.
And anyone who sees this, I would be happy to connect people.
Oh, thank you. That would be an honor. That would be wonderful. What now? On your website, are there places where viewers who are not educators can go to really access the tools that you have, so that we can just use them in our everyday conversations with our neighbors? I mean, I had two neighbors at the end of the block literally having a flag war during the election. And someone got their flag and it was this size. And then their neighbor got this flag and it was that size. And then it got bigger, and then it got bigger. And of course, I was very proud of the neighbor that was voting the way I vote. But still, it was such a juvenile kind of response to what if the two neighbors actually had a conversation?
Right.
So I doubt they did, but are there places on your website where just the average lay person can go and grab some tools?
Yeah, I think a lot of our materials are applicable to everyday people. So on our homepage, there's usually a rotating set of resources. You'll see kind of our newest resources that usually are tied to current events,
Mm-hmm.
um, and those resources I think are just really valuable as to process for yourself or with your community. We have an event series this year that it's called Facing History Now, Conversations on Equity and Justice. And those conversations are for the broader community as well as for educators. So for example, we hosted Isabel Wilkerson, the Pulitzer Prize winning author of Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents in December. And just, hearing her frame her analysis of the US as a caste system in relation to other caste systems can really open up a conversation about racism or anti-racism, maybe in a different way than we've had before. So
Mm-hmm.
that conversation series continues, and we'll be doing an event in February around athletes as upstanders. So a little bit of a different take on how people find their or use their platform in service of the pursuit of justice. And then I think social media actually is a great place where a lot of our content is being shared in sort of the bite-sized chunks that you can sort of, look at and grab and share and think about for yourself. So those are maybe three things that I would say might be valuable for the non-educator audience who cares about these issues.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I would imagine, and I can see from your website that when Amanda Gorman stepped on that stage, that was just like gold for you. Like here's somebody so young and so poised and has so much to say. It's just like there's the lesson plan. It wrote itself.
Absolutely wrote itself. There was this incredible tweet, and I wish I could cite who said it, maybe more than one person, but someone basically said, there's an Amanda Gorman in all of our communities. There's an Amanda Gorman in, every high school that, whether they are, privileged, underserved community, like the Amanda Gormans are out there. We need to listen to them and find them. And I kind of love that idea because again, it's sort of true to my experience when I engage with young people. Maybe not everyone has crafted their art to
Mm-hmm.
the level that she has done, and she deserves all the credit for that hard work. But in terms of the clarity of her voice, the conviction of her message, I do believe that that we have leaders in our midst.
Absolutely. Well, I am so grateful that you took time out of what I know is a really busy schedule to come and talk with us today, especially today on International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is such a meaningful day for so many people, and not the least of which is my biological grandmother, Lena Bonda Weber, who was murdered at Auschwitz today, December 1st, 1943. And so that we get to have a day to honor the liberation of Auschwitz in particular. And then for those who don't know, Yom HaShoah happens in April, which is also a Remembrance Day. But it's really special having you here. It's been fun getting to know you, and I'm really looking forward to continuing our conversations. And if there's anything else that you want the viewers to know about Facing History, please share it with us now. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
This has really been meaningful for me too. Again, am honored that you invited me on this, very, very precious day. And for me, it's always the question that I reflect on for myself that I would put out to viewers as well is how do we move from memory, which is so important, to action? What does that look like for each of us? So that's what I'm really thinking about today, and how can I hear the voices, the voices that I need to hear of survivors, and second generation survivors, and just really tap into that for myself. So I'm happy to always to share more about Facing History. I'm so definitely looking forward to getting to know you even more, and especially as the film develops. And I'm so grateful to be in relationship with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone say thank you to Liz Vogel. Really appreciate having you come on today, and have a wonderful, beautiful Wednesday.
Same to you. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks so much, Liz. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. So just so that everybody knows, if you came in late to the program, no problem. This will be posted on the IGTV feed here, so you can rewatch. And then in a couple of hours, it will be posted on our YouTube channel, Beth Lane Film. And there are 3 playlists there. We have sample reels, we have our 60-second doc series, and then we have all the replays of all the Banter with Beths. Later on today, 4:30 Pacific Standard Time, 6:30 Central Standard Time, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, I will be the keynote speaker at the Chicago Creative Coalition's Passion and Purpose series, where I will be talking about the film, and it's an honor again to do it today of all days. And then next Wednesday at 10 a.m., my guest on Banter with Beth is Susie Snyder, who has been a curator at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. for the last 29 years. Susie has a lot to share. So I'm really grateful that you guys all came on today. Thank you so very much. You can always go to the website, bethlane.com or wouldyohideme.com to get news. And please, follow us, hit little likes on this replay so that we can try and get our Instagram audience to grow. And thanks for tuning in. And may everyone have a very, very meaningful and blessed day today on International Holocaust Remembrance Day. See you soon. Bye.